He was right there. But why didn't he grab him? Accident? Or were they told not to?
My son didn't scream when he fell, and no one tried to catch him. Think about that for a second. A 6-year-old child. A balcony. People standing right there, and not one person moved. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. I wish I could tell you I misunderstood what I saw, that it all happened too fast, that it was chaos, confusion, panic, anything that would make sense. But it wasn't. It was quiet. Too quiet. It happened on a warm Thursday afternoon, the kind where everything feels slow and safe, the kind of day where nothing is supposed to go wrong. My name is Elena Vargas. I'm 34 years old, and my son, Mateo, he's 6. Curious, restless, the kind of kid who asks why about everything and doesn't stop until you answer. We had just moved into the building 3 weeks earlier, a modern place, glass railings, clean lines, a shared terrace where neighbors gathered like they actually liked each other. It felt good, safe, even. Maybe that's why I let my guard down. That afternoon, there was a small gathering on the terrace. Nothing formal, just neighbors talking, a few drinks, kids running around in that chaotic, happy way they do. Mateo was one of them. I remember watching him laugh, really watching him. You know those moments where everything feels right, like you can breathe for the first time in a while? That was one of them. And then, something shifted. Not loud, not obvious, just off. Have you ever felt that? When nothing looks wrong, but something is? I noticed it in the way people were standing. Still, too still. There were at least 5 adults near the balcony railing where Mateo had wandered, close enough to touch him, close enough to stop anything from happening. And yet, none of them were moving. Not talking. Not reacting. Just watching. At the time, I didn't know why that bothered me, but it did. I turned away for maybe, 5 seconds? To grab a drink, to respond to someone calling my name, something small, something normal. When I looked back, Mateo was climbing, not dangerously, not recklessly, just the way kids do, testing balance, curious about height, leaning a little too far over the edge. Mateo, I started to say, but the word never fully left my mouth. Because in that exact moment, his foot slipped. Everything slowed down. You've heard people say that before, right? That time stretches in emergencies? It's true. I saw his body tilt forward, his small hands reaching for something that wasn't there, his weight shifting past the point of recovery. And right next to him, Daniel Reeves, 42, tall, calm, the kind of man who always looked like he was thinking 3 steps ahead of everyone else. He was right there. Close enough to grab Mateo's shirt, close enough to pull him back in half a second. And he saw it happening. I know he did, because his eyes met mine. Tell me something. If you saw a child about to fall, what would you do? You wouldn't think. You wouldn't hesitate. You'd just move, right? Daniel didn't move. Not even a flinch. Not even a reach. Nothing. Mateo fell. And no one screamed. No one lunged forward. No one even stepped closer to the edge. They just watched. I don't remember deciding to run. My body just did it. Heart slamming against my ribs, breath gone, vision narrowing until there was only one thing that mattered, getting to that railing. Someone brushed past me, or maybe I brushed past them, I don't know. But I remember this clearly. As I ran, the crowd didn't surge forward like you'd expect. They shifted backward, like they were making space. Not for Mateo. For me? And then I heard it. Soft. Urgent. Almost a whisper. Don't what? Don't look? Don't react? Don't what? I reached the railing. My hand slammed against the cold metal. And for the first time since it happened, I looked down. What I saw below made my stomach drop. But it wasn't just that. Because in that exact moment, I realized something even worse. Something that didn't make any sense at all. No one behind me had moved. What I saw at the bottom wasn't what terrified me, it was what I heard behind me. Mateo was lying on the pavement. Still. Too still. For a split second, my brain refused to process it. It felt unreal, like I was looking at someone else's child. Like if I blinked hard enough, the scene would reset. But then I saw his hand twitch, and everything came crashing back. Mateo. I don't remember how I got downstairs. Stairs, elevator, none of it exists in my memory. 1 second I was at the railing, the next I was on my knees beside him, my hands shaking as I touched his face. Warm. He was warm. Hey, baby, stay with me. Stay with me. His eyes were closed. A faint scrape along his cheek. His chest rising, falling. Slow, but there. Alive. A wave of relief hit me so hard it almost knocked the air out of my lungs. But it didn't last. Because something else crept in almost immediately. Something colder. Where was everyone? I looked up. Now they were coming. Slowly. Not rushing, not panicking, just walking. A small group gathered around, murmuring in low voices. Someone finally said, "Call an ambulance," like it hadn't already been the most obvious thing in the world. But no one looked shocked. No one looked guilty. No one looked like they had just watched a child fall from a balcony without lifting a finger. Did anyone? My voice cracked. Did anyone see what happened? A pause. Then a man spoke. Not Daniel. It happened too fast. Too fast? I stared at him. Too fast? I had seen it happen. I had felt every second stretch out. There had been time. Enough time. More than enough. Where were you? I snapped, my voice rising despite myself. You were right there. A few of them exchanged glances. And that's when I noticed it. The way they looked at each other before answering, like they were checking something. Daniel stepped forward then. Calm, composed, not out of breath, not shaken. Exactly the same as he'd been on the balcony. I was closest, he said evenly. I stood up so fast my knees almost gave out. Then why didn't you catch him? Our eyes locked again. That same look? Measured, controlled. There wasn't time. There it was again. The same phrase, different person, same words. Like they were reading from the same script. That's not true, I said immediately. You saw him. You were right there. Elena. His voice was softer now, almost reassuring. It happened in seconds. Seconds. Yes, exactly. So why didn't you move? The sound of sirens cut through the tension. Finally, paramedics rushed in actual urgency, actual movement, and for the first time since the fall, things started to feel normal. Controlled chaos. Questions. Hands, checking Mateo, lifting him carefully onto a stretcher. I followed closely, refusing to let go of his hand. But even then, I couldn't shake it. That feeling, as they loaded him into the ambulance, I turned back for just a second. The group was still there, standing together. Too calm. Watching me. And then I saw her, Lila Chen. She was near the back of the group, arms wrapped tightly around herself, her face pale. Unlike the others, she looked shaken, really shaken. Our eyes met. For a moment, it felt like she might say something. Like she wanted to. She took a small step forward, then stopped. Someone beside her, Marcus Doyle, the building manager, placed a firm hand on her shoulder. Not aggressive, but enough. Enough to stop her. Let's not jump to conclusions, Marcus said loudly, addressing no one and everyone at the same time. The important thing is that the child is getting help. His tone was smooth, controlled. Too controlled. I climbed into the ambulance. The doors slammed shut. And as we pulled away, I caught one last glimpse of the building. Of the balcony. Of the people still standing there. Something wasn't right. Not just with the fall. With them. At the hospital, everything blurred together. Doctors, nurses, forms, questions I barely heard. Mateo was alive. That's what mattered. A concussion. Possible fractures. They needed to monitor him. I sat beside his bed, holding his hand, watching the steady rhythm of the heart monitor like it was the only thing keeping me grounded. But my mind wouldn't stop. It kept replaying the moment. Over and over. Daniel's face. His stillness. The way no one moved. The way they all said the same thing. It happened too fast. No, that wasn't true. Hours later, sometime deep into the night, I stepped out into the hallway. I needed air, space, something. That's when I heard it. 2 voices, low, urgent, just around the corner. She saw it, one whispered. I know, the other replied, but it wasn't supposed to happen like that. I froze. Every muscle in my body locked. Because I recognized that voice, it was Lila. They kept saying it was an accident, but accidents don't come with instructions. I didn't walk away. I should have. Maybe any reasonable person would have. But something about the way Lila said it, it wasn't supposed to happen like that. It didn't sound like shock. It sounded like a mistake. I stayed still, just out of sight, barely breathing. She's already asking questions, Lila whispered, her voice tight with panic. The second voice responded, lower, firmer, male. Then she needs to stop. A pause. And you need to stop talking. Footsteps. I moved back just in time, pretending to come from the opposite direction. Lila turned the corner and nearly ran into me. Her face drained of color. Elena, I was just not supposed to happen. Like what? I cut in. Silence. The kind that says everything. Her eyes darted down the hallway, like she was expecting someone to appear. I didn't mean, she started. Yes, you did. I stepped closer. You were there. You saw it. Don't tell me that was normal. Her lips trembled. For a moment, I thought she was going to tell me everything. Instead, she shook her head. I can't. Can't? Not won't. Can't. Lila, I said, softer now, trying a different approach. That's my son in there. Her eyes flicked toward Mateo's room. Something cracked in her expression. Guilt. Fear. Both. You don't understand, she whispered. It's not just people deciding not to help. Then what is it? I demanded. Another glance down the hallway. Then she leaned in, just slightly. There are rules. Rules. The word hit wrong. What rules? I asked. But she was already backing away. I shouldn't have said anything. Lila, I'm sorry. And just like that, she turned and walked away. Rules? What kind of rules tell people to stand still while a child falls? The next morning, I went back to the building. Not because I wanted to. Because I needed answers. Everything looked the same. Too normal. Sunlight reflecting off glass. Clean floors. Quiet hallways. You'd never know what happened there just hours earlier. But I did. I went straight to Marcus's office. He greeted me like nothing had happened. Mrs. Vargas, he said smoothly, how is your son? Alive. Because he was lucky. Where's the security footage? I asked. No small talk, no patience left. Marcus didn't even blink. I'm afraid the cameras covering that section were undergoing maintenance. Of course they were. When? I asked. Since earlier this week. Convenient. Then show me the maintenance logs. A slight pause. Not long. But enough. I'll have to check with management. Management. Always someone higher. Always someone else. Do that, I said, because right now it looks like no one tried to help my son. Marcus's expression tightened. Just a fraction. I understand your distress. No, you don't. My voice cut sharper than I expected, because if you did, you wouldn't be standing there pretending this is normal. For the first time, something flickered in his eyes. Not guilt. Annoyance? Be careful, Elena, he said quietly. Accusations can escalate situations unnecessarily. Unnecessarily? A child fell. People watched. What part of that is unnecessary? I left before I said something I couldn't take back. But I didn't leave empty-handed. Because about an hour later, my phone buzzed. A message. From Lila. Just one image. A screenshot. My fingers hesitated before opening it. Something in my gut told me this was it. The piece that would make everything worse. I tapped it. An email. Clean. Corporate. Official. Subject line. Liability compliance drill mandatory participation. My stomach dropped. I started reading, and with every line, every carefully worded instruction, Everything began to make sense in the worst possible way. In situations involving potential fall risk, residents are advised to avoid physical intervention. Direct contact may result in legal exposure. Observe and report, do not engage anything. Do not engage. My hand started shaking. This wasn't hesitation. This wasn't panic. This was training. They didn't freeze. They followed instructions. And Daniel, the man closest to my son, he didn't fail to act. He chose not to. I stared at the screen, my reflection faintly visible over the text. And one thought pushed through everything else. Cold, clear, unavoidable. If this was a drill, then how many times had they practiced doing nothing? My phone buzzed again. Another message from Lila. Just 3 words. They'll deny it. I looked back up at the building, at the balcony, at the place where everything changed. And for the first time since the fall, I wasn't just scared. I was angry. It wasn't fear that stopped them. It was policy. I didn't sleep that night. Not even for a minute. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it again, Mateo slipping, his body tipping forward, Daniel standing there like a statue. But now, the image had changed. Before, it was confusion. Now, it was intention. By morning, I wasn't guessing anymore. I was done asking what happened. Now I needed to prove it. The first call I made wasn't to the building. It was to a lawyer. Let me get this straight. Rachel Kim, 38, said, her tone sharp, precise. You're telling me multiple adults witnessed a child about to fall and chose not to intervene? Yes. And you believe this was based on some kind of policy? I know it was. I forwarded her the screenshot Lila sent. There was a pause as she read. A long one. This is real, she muttered. Not a question. A realization. What does it mean? I asked. It means, she said slowly, someone designed a system where doing nothing is safer than helping. Safer. The word made my stomach turn. Rachel didn't waste time. Do not confront them again without documentation, she warned. If this is tied to corporate liability policy, they'll shut down fast. Too late. They already were. Because when I went back to the building that afternoon, things had changed. The terrace was closed. A simple sign hung on the door. Convenient timing. I wasn't allowed up. Marcus made sure of that. Until the review is complete, he said, blocking the entrance with a polite but immovable stance. Or until I stop asking questions. I shot back. His smile didn't reach his eyes, but shutting me out didn't stop me. It pushed me further. Rachel dug into the property management company. What she found wasn't isolated. 3 incidents in the last 2 years, she told me over the phone that evening. Different cities, same pattern. My chest tightened. Children? 2 children, 1 adult. I swallowed hard. And in each case, witnesses reported hesitation, delayed response, statements like it happened too fast. The same words. Again. This isn't random, Rachel continued. This is behavioral conditioning. Conditioning. The word echoed in my mind. Not suggestion, not advice, training. And the email? I asked. It's part of it, she said. Soft enforcement. You present it as safety guidance. Repeat it enough times, people internalize it. So when the moment comes, they follow it. Even if a child falls, there was one name that kept appearing in the documents Rachel uncovered. Consultant reports, risk assessments, internal strategy memos. Daniel Reeves. My chest went cold. I didn't wait. I went straight to him. He opened the door like he'd been expecting me. No surprise. No hesitation. Just that same calm expression. You shouldn't be here, Elena, he said. You wrote it, didn't you? No greeting, no build-up. Just the truth laid bare between us. A pause. Then, not all of it. Not denial. Confirmation. You were right there, I said, my voice tightening. You could have saved him. I could have, he agreed. No emotion. No regret. Then why didn't you? He studied me for a moment, like he was deciding how much I was ready to hear. Because people don't act rationally in emergencies, he said finally. They panic. They make things worse. He's 6. And if I'd grabbed him and he slipped anyway, Daniel replied calmly, if he pulled me over with him, if I caused additional harm, you don't know that. Exactly. That word again. Controlled, measured, cold. So you did nothing, I said. I followed protocol. Protocol. You watched a child fall. I minimized risk. I felt something snap inside me. Not loud, not explosive, just final. This wasn't about safety, I said quietly. This was about liability. He didn't respond. Because he didn't need to. You train them, I continued. All of them. That's why no one moved. It prevents chaos. No, I said, shaking my head. It creates it. You just don't see it from up there. For the first time, something shifted in his expression. Not guilt, not doubt. Just irritation. You're emotional, he said, understandably. Emotional. That's what this was to him. A variable. A factor. Something to account for and not feel. I stepped closer. Say it, I said. Say you chose not to save him. A long pause. Then, I chose not to act outside the system. There it was. Clear. Complete. Unapologetic. I stared at him. And in that moment, I understood something terrifying. He didn't think he'd done anything wrong. I left without another word. Because there was nothing left to say. That night, I sat at my kitchen table staring at the documents Rachel had compiled. The email, the incident reports, Daniel's name, over and over again. This wasn't just my son. It was bigger, systemic, designed. My phone buzzed. An email, unknown sender. I opened it, and my breath caught. Cease dissemination of confidential materials immediately. Failure to comply will result in legal action. They knew. They were watching. And they were ready to fight. I looked at Mateo's room. At the quiet rise and fall of his chest as he slept. Then back at the screen. And I made a decision. If they thought I'd stay quiet, they didn't understand me at all. They thought silence would protect them, but silence was the one thing I refused to give them. I didn't respond to the threat. Not directly. Because by the time that email hit my inbox, it was already too late. Are you sure about this? Rachel asked me one last time. We were sitting in a small office, documents spread across the table, emails, internal memos, incident reports, every piece of it forming a pattern that was impossible to ignore once you saw it. They're going to come after you hard. I know. They'll question your credibility, they'll say you're emotional, unstable, that you're twisting a tragic accident into something else. I nodded. They already are. The difference was, now I had proof. Rachel had connected me with an investigative journalist, Aaron Patel, 41. Quiet, methodical, the kind of man who didn't rush stories because he understood what happened when you got them wrong. He spent days verifying everything. The email Lila sent. The maintenance blackout on the cameras. The prior incidents in other buildings. And Daniel. Always Daniel. When Aaron finally looked up from his notes, his expression had changed. This is bigger than negligence, he said. I didn't respond. Because I already knew. The story went live 3 days later. It started small. A headline buried halfway down a news site. The balcony protocol, when doing nothing becomes policy. Then it spread. Fast. Faster than I expected. Because once people understood it, really understood it, they couldn't look away. Video clips surfaced, interviews, former residents speaking out, people who had received the same guidelines. People who had stood in similar moments and hesitated. Not because they didn't care, because they had been told not to act. The company denied everything. Of course they did. Public statement, carefully worded. Safety recommendations misinterpreted. Resident autonomy. Unfortunate incident. But then Rachel released the internal documents. Not summaries. Not interpretations. The actual files. And that's when it broke. Regulators stepped in first. Then attorneys. then everyone else. A class action lawsuit formed within a week. Not just me, other families, other incidents, patterns that had been buried, now exposed. Marcus Doyle was fired within days, but that didn't end it. Because internal emails showed he hadn't just followed policy, he enforced it. Aggressively, Lila testified, quietly at first. Then publicly, her voice shaking but steady enough to be heard. They told us it was for our protection, she said, that helping could make things worse, legally. And Daniel? He didn't disappear. He didn't hide. He defended it. In a recorded interview, calm as ever, he said, "Human instinct is unreliable. Systems exist to reduce harm." Reduce harm? I watched that clip more times than I should have. Waiting for something to crack. For doubt, regret, anything. It never came. He lost everything professionally. Consulting contracts terminated. His name pulled from firms, reports, advisory boards. But even then, he didn't change. And somehow, that was the most unsettling part. But this story wasn't about him. Not really. It was about what happened after. Mateo woke up 2 days after the fall. I was sitting beside him when his eyes opened. Slowly, confused. "Mom," he whispered. And just like that, everything I'd been holding together broke. I cried. Not quietly, not controlled, just completely. "You're okay," I kept saying, even though I wasn't sure who I was trying to convince. "You're okay, you're okay." He looked at me, still groggy. Then he asked the question I had been dreading. Why didn't anyone catch me? There it was. Simple, direct, impossible. I froze. Because how do you explain something like that to a child? How do you tell him that a group of adults stood a few feet away and chose not to help? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I took his hand, held it tighter than I ever had before. "They should have," I said finally, and that was the truth. Recovery took time. Physically, he healed. Kids do in ways adults sometimes can't, but I watched him more closely after that. Not just his steps. His trust? That's what had been broken. Not just bones. Trust. We moved out of that building within a month. I didn't step onto that terrace again. Didn't need to. But I didn't walk away from it either. The case dragged on for over a year. Depositions, hearings, evidence. Slow, exhausting, necessary. In the end, the company settled. A large sum. Confidential terms in some areas. But the policy? Gone. Not revised. Not reworded. Removed completely. And more importantly, new regulations were introduced. Clear ones. You cannot instruct people to withhold reasonable aid in emergencies. Not under the guise of liability. Not ever. It didn't fix everything, but it changed something. Months later, on a quiet afternoon, Mateo and I were at a park. He was climbing again. Higher than I liked. Of course he was. "Careful," I called out instinctively. He laughed. Kept going. And for a moment, I felt it again. That flicker of fear. That memory. Then, a boy nearby slipped. Not far, not serious, but enough. And before I could even react, a stranger reached out. Quick, natural, immediate. Steadying him without hesitation. No pause, no calculation, no protocol. Just instinct. I watched it happen. Really watched it. And something inside me settled. Mateo climbed down a minute later and ran over. "Did you see that?" he said. "I did." He smiled. Like it was nothing. Like that's just how the world works. And maybe that's how it's supposed to work. I looked around the park, at the parents, the strangers, the quiet, unspoken awareness people had of each other. Then I exhaled. For what felt like the first time in a long time. That's how it's supposed to be. And this time, there was nothing unanswered. Nothing hidden. Nothing waiting to fall.
If you saw this happening, would you break the rule or follow it?